Hello, I am Jay. I am a junior and going to be the next vice president of IGDA, and I have a workshop about using split screen multiplayer in Unity. Ever since I figured out how to do this during the B-Term break, I have well, I've only made one other project simply because I haven't had enough time, but I pretty much haven't stopped doing it because it's really easy. Now that the new input system has a lot of things that allow to make it easier than it might have been previously to do this. I have a short demo of it to demonstrate kind of what it ends up being like. So it ends up having the capability of both the inputs of the characters being bound very easily between multiple characters, but also the split screen controlling. It's a good place to move this. I don't know. Okay. So the first thing is, in order to do this, there's a couple packages you need. The first one is the input system. It will not work without this. The second one, to make it a little easier to do some camera stuff, we have Cinemachine. Both of these you'll have to download in Unity's package manager, which you can get to through Windows package manager. Then once you're in here in Unity registry, you just search up input system and then Cinemachine, and then you install them, and then you're good to go. So I will open up a new folder. I'm going to create a new scene, starting from scratch. Because I have the other demo in this. Actually, I'll get to that when I get to it. The first general thing you do is creating an input action asset where you will bind all of the controls. So in the create menu, either through the plus or right clicking, you get to create. All the way at the bottom here, you'll be able to find input actions. And once you've made that, you can go into it and you can have an action map of a bunch of different controls. Over here, you also would want to add control schemes. I believe, I don't think in this project, I don't know if it does other times because I feel like Unity gaslights me. I think sometimes it gives you a default control schemes and input action assets. But if it doesn't, you have to remember to add control schemes. Otherwise, there's no inputs. And it's not your code that's wrong. It's just that it just isn't detecting any controllers. So for here, I'll add a simple, I don't know if you guys have used the new input system before, but in the actions, there's different action types. For getting like a vector2, you do value, then vector2. Through this, you can have, for example, the left stick of the gamepad will just already pass in the correct thing. If you want to do something more interesting, to have to make or to have a bunch of things, you can do a composite that allows, this is, okay, I think this is I passed on the wrong thing, I believe. Don't know why that's not. I think this might be weird. This should not be happening. Regardless, I can just use the other one that I made previously. Since that one I know is working and I don't want to spend too long trying to figure it out. So in here with the move actions, I have a composite of WASD. Under here, I have mouse button, right trigger, and then for the look, I have a join command. So now that the input action asset is created, now the controls are set. There's one extra thing I'm putting it here, so because it needs to be used in 2 steps. But this is used for split screen. In the layers, in order to get the multiple cameras to properly display the thing they're supposed to, you have to add a layer. It won't affect how collisions work, so don't worry about that. But in here, in the layer menu, I just added player 1, player 2. So for every player you would want to add a layer for them. The next step is creating just a player prefab. So the way I'll do that is I always start from empties. The reason I do that is because transforms being parented can get wacky, and then like having to, if you want to swap out the model and whatnot, it gets a lot. So for now, well, once I've made that empty, I'll then go into the prefab. What I want to add to this prefab is I want to add a camera. In here, it's going to default have an audio listener. You can only have one in a scene, so I'm going to get rid of that. Another thing, I'm going to want to add a Cinemachine brain. That will allow Cinemachine to work. I remember one time I was having trouble with my camera not working. It's because I forgot to add a Cinemachine brain. Sometimes it does it automatically. I think because I usually work in the prefab when I'm setting this up, I have to add it. The next thing is with those layers, you have to go to the camera's culling mask. It decides what things not to render. I'm going to disable the 2 layers I had, because whenever you're setting up the which players on which screen, you'll just add their specific layer. And it's clean to just have them all off by default, so you don't have to go through remove them all. You can just add one. That's it with the camera. Then you would want to have an object that's a player. So I'm just going to do that with I'll just do it through an empty and then have a cube later for the visuals. Let's just do this. Let's add a box splitter here. I like having the models separate from the actual stuff. In addition to that, this is the big one. You want to have a player input component. In here, I'll add the input action asset. You just put in the one you made. Then I also, in the camera here, you want to drag the camera right there and change the behavior from send messages. I'm going to recommend using invoke unity events. However, you are going to manually set that versus C# events is something that's a little more technical, but you don't have to remember to plug stuff in because it'll do it as soon as like the script initializes. But I would recommend unity events. If I have time, I can go into extra stuff for the C# events. Another thing is with Cinemachine, I have the camera, but that camera just does the rendering. In order to actually have the camera do Cinemachine stuff, I'm gonna need a virtual camera. Let me pull up quickly the settings I do so I don't have to do it, remember later. I think I do framing, transposer, UFB. You can figure out your own setup that you like to do. I tend to do this is I'm copying from a previous game where you don't rotate the camera in a certain direction. So that's why the vertical axis isn't changed at all. Horizontal, I'm just going to put in that should work how I want it to now. One other thing you need to add to the virtual camera component is I'm just getting lost in here. Cinemachine input provider. This will allow the right stick of the controller or the mouse to actually control the camera. Do that. The index we will update in the script. That'll decide what player it is. For the XY axis input action reference, I'm going to select the look one I set. If you didn't see earlier, the way that's usually is done is right stick, and then there's something called delta mouse, which is like delta time. It's just the time since the last time it was called. And the changes since the last call. So now that should be set up. The next thing in the actual scene, I'm going to delete the prefab from the scene because that's going to be spawned in when a player connects. I'm going to create a player manager. This will process players joining the game. In here, the big script, in addition to whatever we're going to be adding, is the player input manager. Similarly, set it to invoke Unity events. By default, it's join players whenever a button is pressed. You can also set it to have it be when a specific button is pressed, in which case you can set it to either you can manually choose what the binding is, or if you already have one, you can just set it to that. The big thing you want to plug in here is the player prefab we made, and enable split screen. Now we're going to want to create another script to process the split screen actually being set up. So just a C# script. I normally just call this player manager. The same thing as I named this object. Oh wait, because I have another one called that in this project. I forgot about that. So I'm going to call it something slightly different. For that to actually load. So here is where we will do some processing for when someone joins. First, I'm just going to delete all this stuff. Here, I'm going to have a player input manager variable because I'm going to need to talk to that component that's on the that's also on the object. I'm just going to wake. I'm going to have that be set with get component. If you want to be fancy, you can do type of player input manager. That way they can't exist without each other, or this one can't exist without the other one. So I'm going to create a couple functions now. So I'm going to have an on player joined. This I've never on a player. That might be something that already exists. That's not how I'm familiar with it. Oh yeah, that's a networking thing. I'm not familiar with how that works. So I'm not going to do that. I'm also going to make this public. The main thing you need to know for this, so because it's processing an input, it's going to require a parameter of input action.callback context. Just call that context. And I'll also make another one for on player left. I don't know if I'll get into setting that up, but if you want to do anything when a player leaves, destroy them, whatnot, you can do it there. So since we're using Unity events, the basic way to do this is player manager. I'm going to put this script on, and in the near the notification behavior, there's the events. If I expand that, you'll have spots to put in the new scripts I just made. Just drag these over, and on the player joined event, from the player input manager, it'll call this. So I'll have it call. Did I not save this? Oh, did I put the no, I put the right one on. Sorry about this. This should work. Oh, no, it's not. Oh, player input. Sorry, I put in the wrong thing. I'm thinking of something else. So instead of the context, it takes in a player input. I should have known that. I'm thinking of when it processes the actual input. This is processing a player join. In here, on player join, on player left, it'll handle all that. So now, I will handle the split screen when the player joins. The first thing I'll do is I'll create a list of layer masks to put in the layers that the player cameras are going to be on. And in here, I will set them. Boop, boop. That'll be player one. That'll be player two. And then in on player joins, I'm going to. So I need to first get that layer. So this is a bit of this is a line you'll have to know because it has to convert from one type of number to another type of number. So I just have to do, I can snag it easily from here, so I don't have to remember. Anyways, it does this complicated stuff that's not important. It's just getting the layer from the camera, from the layer mask. Once you do that, let's get the player input camera, and then get the layer mask of that. Culling mask, sorry. And we have to do this operation similarly because it's a weird data type. Basically, all this is saying is add camera layer to the culling mask. Then one other thing I have to do, I'm going to make another script quick to get these variables. I will, yeah. So in Unity, I'm going to make another script for the character controller. In here, I'm going to store the virtual camera. It's public. I'm also going to store. Actually, I have that, so I don't need to worry about that. Oh no, I'm handling that in the same thing. So on here, I'm going to just get the. I'm just making this a little more simple. So equals. I'm gonna from the player input. I'm going to attach the character script to that. So I'll get the character script. And then from there, I'm going to get the character's virtual camera because I have to set the layer of this to the camera layer so that it'll render the camera correctly. Just layer equals camera. Also, I have to set up in the virtual camera. So this virtual camera is on here. It's Cinemachine input provider. And its player index. I'm going to set that to the player inputs player index. That way it knows which player of the connected players whose controls what camera it's going to be assigned to. Now that that's handled, I'm going to go, I have to connect this character controller script in the prefab. Character controller, their virtual camera, grab it from the prefab. And I don't know if it'll function right now, or since it's not getting the input right now, it's not going to be a good demonstration because they're not going to move. So you don't know if they're rendering different stuff because they'll be in the same spot. Oh, I didn't mention. So the player manager, I put in the player prefab because when a controller connects, it instantiates that prefab, so you don't have to do that. So in the character controller, I'm just going to snag the code that I previously made here. So what this does, it first grabs the player input component and a rigid body. It holds the virtual camera, similar to how this did. The big thing is I'm going to connect some functions. I'm just gonna snag everything that's in the class. Oh, wrong one. So it has a basic character controller, wherever that is, delete that since it's redundant. The big thing to connect the controls using in the player input under invoke Unity events, it'll have this events thing. Then you have to also go to player actions, move, fire, look should already be processed, so you don't have to worry about that. Just bring this up here. This you can do it another way, but then demo character controller, I'm gonna call its move and its fire. So these functions will be called, and on the fire, so on the mouse click, it's going to increase the size of the character. And then the on move, it just holds on to the input. I process it and update just to play nicely with the camera. Because you can put the move logic in just the move function. So anytime the movement changes, it'll also change. However, because I have it so that the movement is based on the camera, that doesn't account for when the camera rotates. I'm going to quickly check if there's anything that I did not plug in. I think I didn't set some of these. So for the speed, I'll set to like 20, size increase, I'll put that down. So in here, player manager holds camera layers, all this. So, oh, I don't have a ground, but I can make one. I have the joint action set to space. What did I not attach? Oh, I didn't attach a rigid body. That's the one thing I forgot. Also, I'm going to have this not have gravity and have its rotation frozen. What else did I forget? What? Oh, I put it on a player manager. That was my bad. I can also, while I'm here, quickly make a floor. I'm just going to throw on the grid material so that you can see movement. Oh, wait, this is once again in the player prefab. I keep forgetting to move out of it. So up here is my prefab. So I will, that's not important for now. This object, I think maybe some stuff is not playing nicely. Yeah, so it's just the way I set up the camera isn't playing nicely, but you can see that the cameras are controlling differently to each other. And all the stuff is moving with itself. If I go into what I set up previously, so it's in this, when you connect, it has the controls bound to the character, and you can look around with the split screen, and the split screen works. So this is looking at different objects, and both things can move independently. I'm going to go into the scene I have a little more polished because I had a little more time with it. There's a couple extra things I did with it. One, you might have seen earlier, they have different colors. This I also set in the player manager script. Oh, I didn't show the fire functionality, but it's using the same object, so it should work in the same script, basically. The way I did this, if I go into the player manager script that's a little more fleshed out, I basically have a list of colors that I set in the inspector. And then when the player joins, I grab, where is it? I grab the character controller, and then I grab its mesh renderer, then the material, the color, and I set that with the index of this. One other thing, I can't demonstrate this because I don't have scene switching. However, in order to preserve this between scenes, you can use the don't destroy on load function. I didn't test it. I think you also need to do it on this object. But that's how you are able to preserve the player settings between scenes without having to set up a whole bunch of stuff. If you need something more complicated, you can look into a more complicated approach. But this is the basic functionality, and it only took half an hour to set up while knowing what to do. I have a GitHub link of this. I can drop that in the IGDA Discord. I have a README list of instructions of all the steps, and that's what I was reading off of this entire time. It has a README list of instructions of how to set all this stuff up. So if you're going through it on your own, you can reference. It also mentions using C# events, which is just the Unity events but in code. But that's about what I have to show. And I love party games. So when I learned this and how easy it is to set up, I have been making a ton of party games with split screen, and I've loved it. Thank you for listening to my workshop, and good luck on any of your own game projects.
Awesome. Any questions?
So if you have this, like, you press space bar, it adds a screen. Is there a way to tell it I can only have 2 players? Like, what happens if you have 2 players who press space bar? Will it try to add a
So you can, under player input manager, if you pick limit number, you can max it out. So I have 1. I have it set to 1, so it connects with my computer first, I believe. Then if I try to, it throws an error, so I don't know if that needs to be handled. I don't believe so. However, it does prevent me from connecting with this. Anyone else? Well, thank you.